A day after we moved into the new apartment, the previous owner called and said, "I forgot to turn off the hidden cameras, but don't tell your husband what I saw. Come alone, right now." I stood in our new kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, boxes still stacked against every wall, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "What did you see?" "Not over the phone, please. The coffee shop on Sherman Avenue, 2 o'clock. Come alone, Mrs. Patterson." He hung up. I looked at Gerald, who was in the living room assembling our new bookshelf, humming something under his breath, completely relaxed. And I knew. Before I saw anything, before I heard anything, I knew. Something was wrong. Hello, dear listeners. Before I share this story with you, I ask that you please support our channel. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share your thoughts in the comments about trust, betrayal, and the moment when a stranger cares more about your safety than the person who promised to love you forever. Your support means everything to us. Now let me tell you about the day I learned that sometimes the people who barely know you see what the people who've known you for decades choose to ignore. My name is Valerie Patterson, and I'm 58 years old. I spent 33 years working for the Chicago Public Library System. Started at Woodson Regional Library in Bronzeville when I was 25, fresh out of DePaul with my library science degree. Worked my way up through the system, branch manager at Pullman, assistant director at Woodson, finally, head of reference services at Harold Washington Library Center downtown. I loved that work. Loved being the person who said, "I can help you find that." Loved teaching people how to navigate databases, verify sources, dig through archives to find information that someone, somewhere, didn't want found. I was good at research, very good. That's what made this so humiliating, that I'd spent 3 decades helping strangers find hidden truth while missing what was happening in my own home. I retired 2 years ago, not because I wanted to, but Gerald had retired 3 years earlier, and he'd started making comments about how we never had time together, how retirement was supposed to be a partnership, how I was choosing work over him. So I retired. For him. For us. For a marriage I thought deserved that sacrifice. I grew up on the South Side, in Bronzeville, raised by my grandmother Ruth after my mother died when I was 7. Grandma worked as a domestic and brought home books her employers threw out. She'd stack them in our tiny apartment and tell me, "Baby girl, education is survival, information is power." She died 3 months before I married Gerald. Heart attack, sudden. She never got to see me in my wedding dress, never met my husband, never held her great-granddaughter Nikki. But I think she would have approved of Gerald. He was solid, employed, respectable, the kind of man who showed up, who paid bills, who didn't drink or gamble or run around. Or so I thought. Gerald and I met when I was 24, married a year later at Pilgrim Baptist Church on the South Side, bought our house in Hyde Park in 1995, had our daughter Nikki 3 years later, sent her to Northwestern, watched her graduate and move to Houston for an engineering job. For 35 years, I thought we were partners. The marriage wasn't passionate, hadn't been for years. Maybe it never was. Looking back now, I can see the distance that had grown between us, so slowly I hadn't noticed. The way Gerald stopped asking about my day somewhere around year 20. The way I stopped expecting him to care somewhere around year 25. The way we'd become 2 people sharing space rather than sharing life. But I'd told myself that was normal. The fire dims, the excitement fades. What's left is comfort, companionship, shared history. Better than the alternative, divorce, loneliness, starting over at 58. I'd told myself we were lucky, that lasting 35 years was an accomplishment in itself. I'd told myself it was enough. Then, 2 years after Gerald retired, he started pushing to sell the house. At first, they were gentle suggestions. "This is a lot of house for 2 people, Val." The property taxes keep going up every year. Think how much easier our lives would be without all this maintenance." I'd resisted. That house in Hyde Park was the first place I'd ever owned. The first place where I could paint walls any color I wanted, plant flowers knowing I'd see them bloom, make decisions about doorknobs and faucets and all the small, permanent choices that come with ownership. Grandma Ruth had rented her whole life, lived in that third-floor walk-up on South Parkway for 40 years, paying rent to a landlord who never fixed anything, who raised prices whenever he felt like it, who treated her like she was temporary, even though she'd been there longer than he'd been alive. Owning that house meant I'd broken the cycle, meant I'd built something permanent, meant my daughter grew up in a home her parents owned, not rented. So when Gerald first suggested selling, I said no. But he kept pushing, more insistently, more frequently. "We don't need 4 bedrooms, Val. Nikki's not coming back. Why are we maintaining space we don't use?" Everyone our age is downsizing. It's the smart financial move. We could use the equity, travel, enjoy retirement. Isn't that what we worked for? He had points, valid points. The house did feel empty after Nikki left for college in 2006 and never really came back except for brief visits. Her bedroom sat unused, still decorated the way it had been when she was 17. Posters of singers I didn't recognize, shelves full of debate trophies, a desk where she'd written her college application essays. The guest room, we'd optimistically called "for grandchildren someday," remained perpetually ready for grandchildren who didn't exist yet. Nikki wasn't even dating seriously. Grandchildren felt like a fantasy we'd invented to justify keeping the space. The house needed work too. The roof was leaking in 2 places. The furnace was 40 years old, making ominous noises every time it cycled on. The back porch had started rotting where water pooled. The driveway had cracks big enough to lose your keys in. All of it cost money. All of it took time and energy I didn't have after working all day. And Gerald was right, that we didn't need 4 bedrooms for 2 people who barely talked to each other anymore, except to coordinate schedules and discuss household repairs. So eventually, I agreed. We listed the house in January. It sold in 6 weeks. Hyde Park real estate had appreciated beyond anything we'd imagined when we'd bought for $165,000 in '95. The house sold for $780,000. After paying off what remained on the mortgage, we'd refinanced twice, once to send Nikki to Northwestern, once to replace the roof. We cleared almost $500,000 in profit. It felt like winning and losing at the same time. Rich in money, poor in home. Nikki flew in from Houston to help us pack. She'd cried standing in her old bedroom. "I can't believe you're selling it. This is home." "Home is wherever we are," Gerald had said. "The building doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered to me. It mattered to Nikki. It just didn't seem to matter to Gerald anymore. Gerald found the condo in Evanston. I'd wanted to stay in Hyde Park, look at condos in the neighborhood where we'd built our life. But Gerald was insistent about Evanston. Better value, newer buildings, closer to the lake. "You'll love it, Val. Trust me." The condo was on the 12th floor of a building called the Carlisle. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Modern, sleek. All recessed lighting and granite countertops and European appliances with instruction manuals in 3 languages. Nothing like our house, with its creaky floors and uneven door frames, and the particular smell old houses have, wood and time and accumulated life. "This is perfect," Gerald had said during our first viewing, standing in the empty living room, arms spread wide like he was claiming territory. "Low maintenance, building has a doorman, a gym, covered parking. We won't have to shovel snow, won't have to worry about the roof leaking or the furnace dying. We can just live. Enjoy retirement. Isn't this what we worked for? I'd wanted to love it, wanted to see it as the fresh start he kept promising. But something felt wrong. Not about the apartment itself. It was beautiful, objectively beautiful. Something about Gerald's eagerness, the way he'd pushed for this specific building, this specific unit, this specific view. The way he'd dismissed every hesitation I had, every question I raised. You're being sentimental, Val. It's just a building. We're starting a new chapter. We bought it from Mr. David Chen, a 72-year-old widower moving to San Francisco. He'd lived there alone for 5 years after his wife Margaret died. He'd been kind during the sale, patient, left us manuals, phone numbers, advice about the neighborhood. And now he was calling me, telling me about cameras, telling me not to tell my husband. I waited until Gerald left for the gym. Then I went to meet Mr. Chen. The coffee shop on Sherman Avenue was one of those places trying too hard to be artisanal. Exposed brick walls, reclaimed wood tables, Edison bulb lighting. A chalkboard menu listing drinks that cost $7 and required 3 modifiers to order. Young people sat at every table, with laptops and expensive headphones, performing productivity for each other while actually scrolling social media. The air smelled like overpriced coffee and the particular anxiety of people pretending to work. Mr. Chen was in the corner booth, iPad on the table in front of him, 2 cups of coffee already waiting. He'd ordered for both of us, somehow knowing I'd come, somehow confident I wouldn't refuse this meeting even though everything about it felt wrong, dangerous, like stepping into something I couldn't step back out of. He stood when he saw me. Old-fashioned courtesy, the kind of gesture men his age still made, the kind that felt both respectful and slightly sad, like watching someone practice manners that nobody valued anymore. Mrs. Patterson, thank you for coming. Please sit. I sat, looked at the coffee he'd ordered for me, black, no sugar, which was exactly how I took it even though I'd never told him that. Had he guessed? Had he paid attention during the apartment sale? Noticed details about me the way good salespeople do? Or had he watched me on those cameras, seen me making coffee in what I thought was my private kitchen, learning my habits the way predators learn prey? What's this about? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my hands wanted to shake. He looked pained, more than uncomfortable, genuinely distressed, like he was about to do something necessary but terrible. Like a doctor preparing to give bad news he didn't want to deliver. I installed security cameras in the apartment after Margaret died, he said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. 3 of them, very small, hidden. I was alone and paranoid and… He trailed off. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Protection, peace of mind, something. Where? My voice came out sharper than I intended. I installed security cameras after Margaret died. 3 of them, hidden. I was alone and paranoid. I should have removed them before I sold the apartment. I forgot. I'm so sorry. Where? Living room smoke detector, bedroom closet, kitchen cabinet. They upload to cloud storage automatically. I haven't checked the footage since I moved. But yesterday, I was deleting old files, and I saw… He paused. I think you need to see this. He turned the iPad toward me. The screen showed our living room. High angle, grainy quality. Timestamp said Tuesday afternoon, 3 days ago, when I'd driven to Milwaukee to visit my friend Denise. I watched Gerald unlock the door. I watched him let a woman in. She was younger than me, maybe 45. Light-skinned, expensive dress, the kind of confidence that comes from being desired. They kissed, not hesitantly, not carefully, like people who'd done this 1,000 times. Something inside me went still, not shocked, not hurt. Those would come later, just still. The way prey goes still when it realizes the predator has been circling all along. "There's more," Mr. Chen said quietly. "I can show you, or I can tell you it's what you'd expect." "Show me." He fast-forwarded. Them on the couch, in the bedroom, moving through our apartment like it was theirs, like I didn't exist. I watched for maybe 10 minutes, long enough to understand, long enough to accept what I was seeing. Then Mr. Chen stopped on a different section. "This part, I think you need to hear this." They were back in the living room getting dressed. The woman was checking her phone. Gerald said something. Mr. Chen turned up the volume. "Getting suspicious," Gerald was saying. "She went through my phone last week. I deleted everything, but she still asked questions." The woman, I still didn't know her name, frowned. "Did she find anything?" "No, but it's only a matter of time. She's smart, Simone. Worked as a librarian for 30 years. She knows how to find information." Simone. Her name was Simone. "So what do we do?" she asked. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. Then, "We need to speed things up. The original plan was to wait until next year. We can't wait that long." "Speed up how?" "I don't know yet, but we'll figure something out. We always do." Simone looked uncomfortable. "Gerald, if you're talking about what I think, I'm not talking about anything specific. I'm just saying we need options, real options. Because if she finds out about us, if she files for divorce first, we're screwed. Illinois is an equitable distribution state. She'd get half of everything, maybe more." "What about the life insurance?" Gerald's face changed, hardened. "That's only if something happens to her, and nothing's going to happen to her. Not unless—" He trailed off. "Unless what?" "Nothing. Forget it. We'll figure something out." The video ended. I sat there, staring at the frozen screen, while everything I thought I knew about my life rearranged itself into something I didn't recognize. "I'm so sorry," Mr. Chen said. "I almost didn't show you, but my wife Margaret made me promise before she died. If you see someone in danger, speak up. Silence is complicity." "How long?" My voice sounded distant. "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know. I only watched this one video, but there are recordings going back months, from before you even moved in." Before we moved in, which meant Gerald had keys to this apartment while we still lived in Hyde Park, had been using it for his affair, had been planning something, whatever speeding things up meant, for months. "Can you send me the videos?" I asked. "All of them?" "All of them. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Mr. Chen nodded. "I'll give you access to the system. The cameras are still recording. They'll keep recording unless we turn them off." "Don't turn them off." He looked at me carefully. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I need proof. Real proof. The kind that can't be explained away. The kind that holds up in court." "Court?" Mr. Chen said. "You're talking about divorce?" "I'm talking about whatever this is, whatever he's planning. Speed things up, life insurance, unless something happens to her. That's not just an affair, Mr. Chen. That's something worse." I stood up. "Thank you for showing me this, for caring enough about a stranger to get involved." "You're not a stranger," he said gently. "You're someone who deserves to know the truth." I went home. Gerald was in the kitchen making dinner. "Hey, baby, how was your walk?" "Good. Nice to explore the neighborhood." He came over, kissed my cheek. "I'm making lemon chicken, your favorite. And I got you these new multivitamins. Better than what you've been taking. Take 2 with dinner." He shook out 2 large beige pills into his hand. I looked at them, looked at his face, concerned, caring, the devoted husband worried about his wife's health. The same man who'd talked about life insurance and unless something happens to her 3 days ago. "Thanks, honey." I took the pills, smiled, set the table. And when he wasn't looking, I dropped them in my napkin, folded it carefully, put it in my pocket. After dinner, after Gerald fell asleep, I locked myself in the bathroom and logged into the camera system Mr. Chen had given me access to. Hundreds of hours of footage, 3 months of recordings. I didn't watch everything, didn't have time. Didn't need to see every moment of the affair to understand what was happening. I watched strategically, skipped forward, looked for conversations, looked for moments when they were talking instead of other things. June 10th, Gerald alone in the apartment, going through the medicine cabinet, taking bottles, reading labels carefully. June 15th, Gerald and Simone on the couch, her asking, "How much longer do we have to wait?" Him saying, "Not long now." June 22nd, Gerald on his phone. I could only hear fragments. Insurance policy, $750. Natural causes. July 5th, the day after we moved in officially. I was at the grocery store. On camera, Gerald let Simone in. They went to the kitchen. He opened the cabinet where I kept my vitamins. I watched him take out the bottle, open it, do something I couldn't quite see from the camera angle. Watched Simone ask, "Are you sure this is safe?" Watched Gerald say, "Positive, nobody will ever know." The video kept playing, but I couldn't watch anymore, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past one terrible understanding. Those pills he'd given me tonight, the vitamins he'd been giving me for days, they weren't vitamins. I ran to the kitchen, pulled out the bottle, stared at it like it was a snake. How many had I taken? 5 days, 2 pills every morning. What had he put in them? What was it doing to me? Was that why I'd been feeling tired, dizzy, off balance? I'd thought it was stress from the move, thought it was retirement adjustment, thought it was just getting older. It wasn't. It was poison. My husband was poisoning me. I stood there in the dark kitchen holding that bottle and felt something crack inside me. Not my heart, something deeper, some fundamental belief about safety, about trust, about the person you sleep next to every night. I couldn't call the police, not yet. What would I tell them? That my husband was having an affair? That he'd talked about insurance money on a video? That I suspected he'd tampered with my vitamins? They'd tell me to hire a divorce lawyer, maybe get the pills tested, maybe file a report. And then what? Gerald would know I knew, would destroy evidence, would make me look paranoid, crazy, suspicious, would probably kill me faster before I could prove anything. No, I needed more, needed absolute proof, needed documentation so clear, so complete, that when I was ready to move, there would be no defense, no excuse, no way out. I needed to watch, to document, to wait. I needed to make Gerald believe everything was fine, and I needed to survive long enough to destroy him. I dumped every pill from the vitamin bottle down the garbage disposal, ran the water, listened to them grind away into nothing. Tomorrow I'd buy new ones, different brand, different pharmacy. Same size, same color, close enough that Gerald wouldn't notice the switch. I'd replace them capsule by capsule, make sure the bottle looked full, looked untouched, looked exactly like he'd left it. He'd keep giving them to me every morning with coffee and a kiss, and reminders to take care of yourself. I'd keep smiling, keep pretending to swallow, keep letting him believe his plan was working. And the cameras would keep recording, keep documenting every conversation, every lie, every moment he thought he was getting away with murder. I had questions. So many questions. What was in those pills? What was he trying to do to me? What had already been done after 5 days of taking them? Was that why I'd been feeling so tired lately? So dizzy? So off balance in ways I couldn't quite name? I'd attributed it to stress, to retirement adjustment, to the physical toll of packing and moving and starting over at 58. It wasn't stress, it was poison. My husband was poisoning me, and I'd been thanking him for it. Taking the pills he gave me, trusting him with my health, trusting him with my life. I would need to see a doctor, quietly, without Gerald knowing, get blood work done, find out if there was damage, find out what he'd given me, document the evidence, more proof, more documentation, more pieces of the case I was building against him. I would need a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer, or not just a divorce lawyer. Someone who understood criminal law, someone who could take this evidence to the police when I was ready. Someone who could protect me legally while I protected myself physically. I would need to be careful, so careful. Every meal he cooked, every drink he poured, every pill he offered. I couldn't trust any of it, couldn't trust him. I would need to watch those videos, all of them. Hours and hours of footage. See what else he'd said, what else he'd planned, how deep this went, how long it had been happening. And I would need to survive. That was the most important thing. Stay alive long enough to gather everything I needed. Stay alive long enough to make sure he didn't get away with this. Stay alive long enough to destroy him the way he'd tried to destroy me. I got back in bed next to him. Gerald rolled over in his sleep, put his arm around me the way he had for 35 years. Heavy, possessive. The weight of someone who thought he owned me, who thought I belonged to him, who thought he could dispose of me when I became inconvenient. "Love you, baby," he mumbled, half asleep. "Love you too." The words were ash in my mouth, bitter, poisonous in their own way. But I said them because I needed him to believe nothing had changed. Needed him to wake up tomorrow and see the same wife he'd seen for 35 years, trusting, loyal, obedient, unaware. Needed him to feel safe enough to keep talking to Simone, keep using those cameras, keep documenting his own crimes. Needed him to underestimate me just a little bit longer. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, feeling the weight of his arm across my body, and understood something with perfect, crystalline clarity. I was completely alone in this fight. The police wouldn't help me, not yet. Not without more proof than I had. They'd tell me it was a marital dispute, tell me to hire a lawyer, tell me to get a restraining order if I felt threatened. But they wouldn't arrest him for having an affair, wouldn't charge him for talking about insurance money, wouldn't protect me from pills that hadn't been tested yet, from a crime that was still in progress. My friends wouldn't believe me, would think I was paranoid, jealous, going through a difficult adjustment to retirement. They'd say every marriage has problems. They'd say I should try counseling. They'd say I was overreacting to what was probably just vitamin supplements that didn't agree with me. Even Nikki might not believe me. Might think I was trying to poison her relationship with her father. Might think I was making accusations because I couldn't handle the idea of Gerald with someone else. Nobody would save me except me. But that was okay. That was fine. Because I'd spent 33 years teaching people how to find hidden information, how to navigate complex systems, how to document truth so thoroughly that it couldn't be denied. I knew how to research, how to verify sources, how to cross-reference data, how to build cases that held up under scrutiny. I knew how to be patient, how to wait for the right moment, how to let information accumulate until you had enough to act. I knew how to be invisible when I needed to be, how to observe without being noticed, how to ask questions that seemed casual but weren't. And Gerald had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd underestimated me, thought I was just a tired old wife, easy to deceive, easy to manipulate, easy to dispose of when I became more trouble than I was worth. He was wrong, and by the time he realized how wrong, by the time he understood what he'd done by threatening a woman who'd spent her entire career finding things people wanted hidden, it would be too late. His freedom would be gone, his money would be gone, his future with Simone would be gone. Everything he'd planned would crumble, and I would be the one holding the evidence that destroyed him. That's where this part of my story ends, dear listeners. Not with answers, not with confrontation, not with justice, just with knowledge. The terrible knowledge that the person sleeping next to you is trying to kill you. The knowledge that you can't trust anything he says, anything he gives you, anything he does. The knowledge that you're completely alone except for an elderly widower who accidentally recorded the truth, but also with something else, with determination, with cold, clear purpose, with the understanding that survival is the first step, and everything else, the proof, the confrontation, the reckoning, comes after. Gerald thinks I'm dying, thinks his plan is working, thinks I'm just another unsuspecting wife taking her vitamins and slowly fading away. He's wrong. I'm not dying. I'm just getting started. The next morning, Gerald woke me with coffee and a smile. "Morning, baby. Take your vitamins." He shook out 2 pills into my hand, the same beige capsules, the same innocent appearance. I took them, smiled, pretended to swallow. And the moment he left for his morning walk, I spit them into the sink and started working. I'd bought new vitamins the night before, different brand from a 24-hour pharmacy in a neighborhood where nobody knew me. Same size, same color, close enough. I'd refilled the bottle Gerald had tampered with, made sure it looked untouched, made sure everything appeared exactly as he'd left it. Now I had the poisoned pills in a sealed plastic bag, labeled with date and time, hidden in a box of tampons in the back of the bathroom cabinet where Gerald would never look. Evidence. And I had work to do. I spent the next week watching videos, not casually, systematically. Every single recording from the 3 months before we moved in. Hours and hours of footage, methodically cataloged in a spreadsheet with timestamps, dates, key quotes, evidence level. I watched the way a prosecutor would watch, looking for proof, looking for patterns, looking for the moments when Gerald's mask slipped and the truth showed through. June 3rd. Gerald entering alone with keys he wasn't supposed to have anymore. The realtor should have gotten them back at closing. Gerald had pocketed them instead. On camera, he walked through every room, measuring windows with a tape measure, checking closet space, photographing everything with his phone. Not the behavior of someone preparing to move in with his wife, the behavior of someone preparing to move in with someone else. June 5th. Gerald and Simone, together for the first time. First time I heard her full name when he said it, Simone Gardner. 46 years old, I'd later learn, pharmaceutical sales rep for Merck. That's how they met 8 years ago, when she was contracted to the Board of Education to present on employee health insurance options. 8 years, not a brief affair, not a temporary lapse in judgment, a full parallel relationship running alongside our marriage for 8 years. On camera, I watched them kiss in the entryway, watched them move to the bedroom, and then, after, watched them lie in bed, talking the way people do when they're comfortable with each other, when they've done this hundreds of times before. Simone, when are you finally going to tell her? Gerald, laughing. Why would I tell her? This arrangement works perfectly. She handles the house, the bills, all the boring domestic responsibilities. You handle everything else. Why ruin it? Because it's not fair to her. Fair? Gerald's voice went cold, hard. I asked her to retire early and she did it. I told her to sell the house and she agreed. I picked this apartment and she signed the papers without even reading them. She does whatever I tell her to do. Fair doesn't enter into the equation. I paused the video, rewound it, listened again to make sure I'd heard correctly. She does whatever I tell her to do. That's what 35 years of marriage had made me to him. Not a partner, not an equal. An obedient dog who followed commands. I transcribed the quote, added it to my spreadsheet. Evidence of his mindset. Evidence that this was premeditated, calculated, that he saw me as something to be managed and eventually disposed of. June 7th. Gerald alone in the apartment again, this time on his laptop. I could see the screen reflected in the window behind him. He was Googling. I zoomed in as much as the video quality allowed, squinting to read. Can blood pressure medication kill you if you don't have high blood pressure? How long does amlodipine take to cause stroke in healthy person? Undetectable ways to cause heart attack in older women. Life insurance payout timeline after natural death. Do life insurance companies investigate natural causes? He spent 47 minutes researching, taking notes, building his murder manual. I took screenshots of every search I could make out, added them to my evidence file. June 10th. Gerald alone again, this time going through the medicine cabinet Mr. Chen had left stocked. I watched him read labels on various medications, looking up each one on his phone. Blood pressure medication, diabetes medication, heart medication. Finally, he found what he was looking for, a bottle of amlodipine besylate, 10 milligrams. Medication for high blood pressure. He held it up to the light, read the label carefully, put it in his jacket pocket. Mr. Chen's medication, stolen from a dead woman's medicine cabinet. Gerald was already acquiring the murder weapon while I was still living in our house in Hyde Park, still believing we were preparing for retirement together. June 12th. Gerald and Simone in the bedroom again. This time, not the affair. They were dressed, sitting on the bed, having the kind of serious conversation that made my blood run cold. Gerald: I bought more amlodipine online. Generic version from a Canadian pharmacy. No prescription needed. Completely untraceable. And you're absolutely certain this will work? I talked to Rick, my pharmacist buddy from the Board of Education. Didn't give him details, just asked hypothetically what would happen if someone with normal blood pressure took amlodipine regularly. What did he say? Severe hypotension, dangerously low blood pressure, causes dizziness, confusion, falls. In older patients, especially Black women with family history of cardiovascular disease, it can trigger strokes or heart attacks within weeks. She's only 58. That's not that old. Old enough for the medical examiner not to question it. And she's got all the risk factors I need. Sedentary lifestyle since she retired, weight around the normal to high range. Family history, her grandmother died of a stroke at 72. On paper, she's a textbook candidate for cardiovascular event. Simone looked sick. Gerald, listen to yourself. This is murder. Actual, premeditated murder. It's not murder. It's just accelerating an inevitable outcome. She was going to have a stroke eventually anyway, probably in the next 10 or 15 years. I'm just moving up the timeline. That's murder. It's $750,000, Simone. Tax-free life insurance payout, plus $500,000 from the house sale sitting in our joint account. That's mine too once she's gone. That's $1.2 million. We could retire tomorrow, move to Florida like we've always talked about, buy a condo on the beach, start completely fresh. What if the medical examiner suspects something? What if they order an autopsy? They won't. Old black woman in Chicago dies of a stroke? That happens literally every single day. The ME's office is overworked, underfunded. They're not going to waste time and money investigating what looks like textbook natural causes. They'll sign the death certificate as cardiovascular event, offer condolences to the grieving husband, and that's the end of it. What if her doctor suspects something? She hates doctors, only goes when I make her. And even if she did go, what would they find? Slightly low blood pressure, maybe some dizziness? They'd tell her to drink more water, eat more salt, reduce stress. They wouldn't test for amlodipine, unless they had specific reason to suspect poisoning. And why would they? Her loving husband takes such good care of her, brings her coffee every morning, makes sure she takes her vitamins, worries about her health constantly. I had to stop the video, had to stand up, walk away, breathe. He'd thought of everything, every possible complication, every way he might get caught, every detail that could go wrong, and he'd found solutions to all of them. This wasn't impulse, this wasn't passion. This was cold, calculated, methodical planning. This was murder as a project, researched and executed with the same thoroughness he'd used to manage facilities for the Board of Education for 38 years. I forced myself to keep watching. June 15th, more video. Gerald and Simone discussing timeline. Simone: how long is this going to take? Gerald: couple months total. I started slipping half a tablet, 5 milligrams, into her morning coffee about 3 weeks ago. Crushed it up, dissolved it in the coffee before she wakes up. She hasn't noticed anything yet except feeling a little tired, a little dizzy. Classic low blood pressure symptoms. 3 weeks? You've been poisoning her for 3 weeks already. It's not poisoning, it's medication. She's just taking medication she doesn't need, that's all. That's literally the definition of poisoning, Gerald. Semantics. The point is, it's working. She's already showing symptoms once I switch from the coffee to the vitamins. Once I can get a full 10 milligrams into her system twice daily, the effects will accelerate. 2 weeks, maybe 3, and she'll have the stroke or heart attack. Natural causes. Clean. Untraceable. What if she survives the stroke? What if she ends up in the hospital but doesn't die? Gerald shrugged. Then I'm the devoted husband taking care of my invalid wife. Still have access to the money. Still have control. And honestly, if she's incapacitated enough, that might be even better. I could make decisions about her care, about life support, about when to let her go. No investigation, no suspicion. Just a tragic outcome after a devastating medical event. I felt sick, felt rage so pure it was like fire in my blood. He'd thought about it, actually thought about the scenario where I survived his murder attempt but ended up incapacitated, helpless. And he'd decided that would be acceptable, maybe even preferable. This wasn't a man who'd once loved me and fallen out of love. This was a man who saw me as an obstacle, an object, a problem to be solved through whatever means were most convenient. June 15th, more videos. Gerald and Simone discussing the timeline. How long? She asked. Couple months. I started slipping half a tablet into her morning coffee 3 weeks ago. She's already complaining about feeling dizzy. Once I increase the dose to the vitamins, it'll go faster. What if she goes to a doctor? She won't. She hates doctors. And even if she does, what are they going to find? Maybe slightly low blood pressure? They'll tell her to drink more water, eat more salt. They won't test for amlodipine unless they have a reason to suspect poisoning. And why would they? Her loving husband brings her coffee every morning, takes care of her, worries about her health. June 22nd, Gerald on the phone. I couldn't see who he was calling, but I could hear his side of the conversation. Yeah, the policy is active. Sole beneficiary. No waiting period for natural causes. Probably another month, maybe 6 weeks. No, she suspects nothing. Yeah, I'll call you when it's done. July 2nd, moving day. The videos showed us carrying boxes together, Gerald helping me unpack. Both of us playing our roles perfectly. Happy couple, fresh start, new chapter. And 3 days later, July 5th, Gerald tampering with my vitamins while I was at the grocery store. I'd already seen this video with Mr. Chen, but now I watched it again, this time with full context, understanding exactly what I was seeing. Gerald crushing white pills, amlodipine, 10 milligrams each, emptying 20 vitamin capsules, refilling them with the crushed medication, sealing them back up, putting them back in the bottle. 20 capsules, 200 milligrams of blood pressure medication. I'd taken 10 capsules before Mr. Chen called me, 100 milligrams over 5 days. I needed to know what that had done to me. I called a doctor. Not my regular doctor. Gerald knew Dr. Williams, had met him at my appointments, would find out if I scheduled a visit. I called a walk-in clinic in Skokie, used a different name, paid cash. Told them I was experiencing dizziness, fatigue, suspected I'd been exposed to medication I shouldn't have taken. The doctor who saw me was young, skeptical. Exposed how? I think someone has been giving me blood pressure medication without my knowledge. She looked at me like I was paranoid, delusional. A middle-aged woman with marital problems inventing drama. Ma'am, that's a very serious accusation. Do you have evidence? I pulled out the plastic bag, the 10 poisoned pills I'd saved. These were in my vitamin bottle. I think they're amlodipine. I need you to test my blood and test these pills. Her expression changed. When did you last take one? 6 days ago. I've taken 10 total over 5 days. How much do you weigh? 140 pounds. She did quick math. That's about 0.7 milligrams per kilogram, if they're 10 milligram tablets. Not immediately fatal, but definitely dangerous. You could have had a stroke. Could still have one if there's cumulative effect. She ordered full blood work, comprehensive metabolic panel, toxicology screen, blood pressure monitoring. The results came back 2 days later. Amlodipine detected in my blood. Not high enough to kill me yet, I'd stopped taking it soon enough, but high enough to explain the dizziness, the fatigue, the symptoms I'd been experiencing. High enough to prove I'd been poisoned. The doctor asked if I wanted to file a police report. I said not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. She gave me copies of the lab results, documented the pills, wrote a medical opinion stating that, in her professional judgment, I had been administered amlodipine without my knowledge or consent, that this constituted poisoning, that continued exposure could have resulted in stroke or death. Evidence. I found a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Lisa Chen, a criminal defense attorney who'd prosecuted attempted murder cases for the Cook County State's attorney before going into private practice. Her office was in the Loop, 32nd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of place that cost $500 an hour and was worth every penny. I told her everything, showed her the videos, the medical records, the poisoned pills, the timeline. She watched the videos without expression, read the medical reports carefully, examined the pills I'd saved. Then she looked at me. This is attempted murder. Clear, documented, premeditated attempted murder. We need to go to the police. Now. Not yet. Mrs. Patterson, I need more. I need everything. Every video, every conversation, every piece of evidence that shows this wasn't just a stupid mistake or a one-time impulse. I need proof that he planned this, researched this, executed this deliberately over months. I need enough that when we go to the police, when this goes to trial, there's no defense. No reasonable doubt. No way for him to walk. Lisa studied me. You want to keep living with him while we build this case? I'm already living with him. He thinks I'm dying. Let him keep thinking that. Let him keep talking to Simone. Let him keep documenting his own crime. Let him get comfortable enough to make a mistake. That's dangerous. I know, but I've replaced the vitamins. I don't eat anything he makes. I don't drink anything he pours. I'm careful. And I need him to believe everything is normal, so he keeps using those cameras. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, but we do this my way. You hire a private investigator, someone who can follow Gerald, document everything he does, everyone he meets, someone who can corroborate the videos, prove this is ongoing, show a pattern. I'll hire whoever you recommend. And you check in with me every day, every single day. If anything feels wrong, if he does anything suspicious, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you call me and we go to the police immediately. Agreed. And you start moving money, quietly. Open your own bank account. Transfer your half of the house sale profits. Protect yourself financially because when this breaks, when he's arrested, all your joint assets will be frozen during the investigation. I hadn't thought of that. Hadn't thought past survival and evidence and making sure he went to prison. But Lisa was right. I needed to protect myself financially too. The private investigator was named Marcus Webb, 52 years old, former Chicago PD detective who'd spent 20 years in homicide before going private. He'd seen everything. Nothing shocked him. Until I showed him the videos. Jesus, he said, watching Gerald and Simone discuss my murder like it was a home improvement project. This is the most cold-blooded thing I've seen in 30 years of police work, and I've seen a lot. Can you follow him? Document everything? I need to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to, every time he sees Simone. I need patterns, proof that this is ongoing, that he's continuing the plan. Marcus nodded. I can do that. But Mrs. Patterson, Valerie, you understand this is dangerous. You're living with someone who's actively trying to kill you. If he realizes you know, if he suspects you're building a case against him, he won't suspect. I'm very good at being invisible when I need to be. Even invisible people make mistakes, especially when they're scared. I'm not scared. I'm angry. There's a difference. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll start tomorrow. Standard rate is $200 an hour plus expenses, mileage, equipment, that sort of thing. Typical surveillance case like this runs about $5,000 a week. $5,000 a week, $20,000 a month. More money than I'd ever spent on anything except the house, but worth it. Worth every penny to make sure Gerald went to prison for the rest of his life. Do it, I said. Marcus worked fast. Within 3 days, he had Gerald's complete routine mapped out. Mornings, Gerald left the apartment at 7, supposedly for the gym. He did go to the gym, LA Fitness in Evanston, but only for 45 minutes. After that, he met Simone at a Starbucks on Dempster for coffee and what Marcus described as extensive physical contact inappropriate for a public venue. Tuesdays and Thursdays, after the morning coffee, Gerald and Simone drove separately to her condo in Streeterville, 35th floor, 2-bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Navy Pier. Rent, $2,400 a month, paid by electronic transfer from Gerald's bank account. Our joint account, money that was supposed to be ours. They'd stay there for 3 to 4 hours. Marcus couldn't get video inside, but he documented every arrival, every departure, the consistent pattern. Saturdays. Gerald told me he was going to visit his brother in Milwaukee. He wasn't. He was meeting Simone at the Marriott Suites in Rosemont, near O'Hare Airport. They'd check in at noon, check out at 6. Same room every time, Suite 847, which Simone booked in her name using a credit card Gerald had given her. Marcus got copies of the hotel receipts. $340 per visit. Every Saturday for the last 18 months. That was over $30,000 just on hotel rooms. Wednesdays, Gerald's lunch with old colleagues from the Board of Education was actually lunch with Simone at expensive restaurants downtown. Gibson's, RPM Italian, the Capitol Grill, $200 meals charged to our credit card. Marcus documented all of it. Photographs, receipts, GPS tracking data from a device he'd placed on Gerald's car. License plate reader data from toll booths showing Gerald's movements matching Simone's. But Marcus found something else, too. Something I hadn't asked him to look for, but that changed everything. Gerald's been making regular trips to a storage unit in Des Plaines, Marcus told me in his office, pulling up photos on his computer. Public storage on Oakton Street, Unit 214. He goes there about twice a month, always when you're at the library volunteering. What's in it? I don't know yet, but I did background on the rental agreement. He's been paying for that unit for 6 months, $120 a month. And here's the interesting part. He rented it under Simone's name. Why would he need a storage unit? That's what we need to find out. Could be nothing. Could just be affair stuff, gifts, whatever. Could be something more concerning. Can you get inside? Not legally, not without a warrant. But if you happen to have a key, or if you happen to know the access code, I don't. Might be worth finding out. That night, while Gerald slept, I went through his wallet. Found a key I didn't recognize, small, brass, with 214 etched on it. The next day, I drove to the storage unit, told the office I was Simone Gardner, that I'd lost my access code. Could they help me? The young woman at the desk looked it up. Oh, here it is. Code is 7749. Need anything else? No, that's perfect. Thank you. I waited until closing time, waited until the facility was mostly empty. Then I used the code, found Unit 214, used the key. Inside, boxes, dozens of boxes, all labeled in Gerald's handwriting. Financial records, insurance policies, personal documents, Simone's things. I opened the financial records box first. Found bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Investment accounts with Fidelity that weren't in our joint portfolio. Over $600,000. Money that should have been ours. Money Gerald had been hiding, moving, preparing for his new life with Simone. I found the insurance policies box. Life insurance on me for $750,000, but also life insurance on himself for $1 million, with Simone listed as beneficiary. Found documents about the condo, deeds, mortgage papers, and a quitclaim deed already filled out, transferring ownership from both of us to Gerald alone. Just waiting for my signature, or waiting for me to die so Gerald could forge it. I took photographs of everything. Every document, every bank statement, every piece of evidence that showed this wasn't just an affair and a murder plot. This was comprehensive financial fraud. I called Marcus. You need to see this. He came to the storage unit with a professional photographer. We documented everything. Every box, every document. Built a complete inventory of Gerald's hidden life. Evidence. More evidence. So much evidence that even the best lawyer in the world couldn't explain it away. I spent 3 weeks building the case. 3 weeks of watching Gerald smile at me over breakfast. 3 weeks of pretending to take pills he thought were killing me. 3 weeks of listening to him talk about our future while he planned my death. 3 weeks of rage so cold it felt like clarity. And then I was ready. Lisa filed a police report, provided all the evidence, videos, medical records, text messages, financial documents, private investigator reports. The police took it seriously. Attempted murder charges, conspiracy, fraud, theft. They arrested Gerald at his office on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there. Lisa advised me to stay away, let the arrest happen without my involvement. Safer that way. But Marcus was there, watching, documenting. He said Gerald looked shocked, genuinely shocked, like he couldn't believe this was happening, like he thought he'd been so careful, so clever, so untouchable. They arrested Simone the same day. Conspiracy to commit murder. She'd known about the poisoning, had discussed it on camera, had benefited from the financial fraud. She broke within 6 hours of interrogation, told them everything, confirmed that Gerald had planned to kill me, confirmed the amlodipine poisoning, confirmed the life insurance motive, confirmed that she'd known and hadn't stopped him, hadn't warned me, hadn't called the police, gave them a full confession in exchange for a plea deal. Gerald's lawyer tried to fight, hired one of the best criminal defense attorneys in Chicago, Robert Chen, no relation to David, former prosecutor, expert at creating reasonable doubt. He filed motions to suppress the video evidence, argued that Mr. Chen's cameras violated Gerald's expectation of privacy, that the recordings were inadmissible, that nothing captured on them could be used in court. The judge disagreed. Gerald had no reasonable expectation of privacy in an apartment he didn't own at the time the recordings were made. The cameras were legal. The evidence stood. Robert Chen tried different tactics, claimed I'd fabricated the medical evidence, that I'd somehow poisoned myself to frame Gerald, that this was an elaborate revenge plot by a woman scorned. The prosecutor destroyed that argument, brought in the doctor who'd treated me, brought in a toxicologist who explained exactly how amlodipine poisoning works, exactly what it does to the body, exactly how long it takes, explained that self-poisoning with amlodipine was almost impossible to do safely. The difference between creating symptoms and killing yourself was razor thin. No one would deliberately take that risk just to frame a spouse. Robert Chen tried to attack Simone's credibility, called her a liar, a woman trying to save herself by throwing Gerald under the bus, someone whose testimony couldn't be trusted. But Simone's testimony was backed by the videos. Her confession matched what the cameras had captured. Every detail she gave, the timeline, the dosage, the motivation, was corroborated by evidence. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Every day I sat in the front row of the courtroom, made sure Gerald could see me, made sure he understood I wasn't hiding, wasn't ashamed, wasn't broken. The prosecution's case was devastating. They played the videos, let the jury watch Gerald discuss my murder in his own words. Let them hear him calculate my worth as an insurance payout. Let them hear him use racial health statistics to justify why no one would investigate my death. They called the toxicologist, who explained the amlodipine poisoning in terms even I barely understood. Explained how it works, how long it takes, what the symptoms are, how it can kill. They called Marcus, who presented his surveillance evidence. The storage unit, the hidden money, the extensive affair, the pattern of deception that proved this wasn't a momentary lapse. This was calculated, sustained fraud. They called the doctor who'd treated me, who testified about the levels of amlodipine in my blood, about the medical opinion she'd written stating I'd been poisoned. They called David Chen, who explained about the cameras, about why he'd shown me the videos, about the recordings that had captured everything. And finally, they called me. I took the stand on day 9 of the trial, wore a blue dress, the same color as the dress I'd worn on our anniversary dinner all those years ago when I'd still believed our marriage was real. The prosecutor was gentle, asked me to describe my marriage, asked me to describe the move to Evanston, asked me to describe the moment when David Chen called me, when I saw the first video, when I understood what Gerald was trying to do. I told the truth, calmly, clearly, without drama or emotion, just the facts, what I saw, what I heard, what I discovered, what I did to survive. Then it was Robert Chen's turn, cross-examination. He tried to rattle me, suggested I was vindictive, suggested I was lying, suggested the whole thing was a setup, that I'd somehow orchestrated all of this to destroy Gerald's life. Mrs. Patterson, isn't it true that you resented your husband for years? That you blamed him for making you retire early? No, I retired because he asked me to. I didn't resent him for it. Isn't it true that you suspected your husband of having an affair long before you saw any videos? I had suspicions. They turned out to be correct. And when you had these suspicions, didn't you consider divorce? Yes. So you had motive to fabricate evidence against him. I had motive to find out the truth, which I did. The videos aren't fabricated. The medical evidence isn't fabricated. The financial fraud isn't fabricated. Everything I've presented is real, documented, verifiable fact. Mrs. Patterson, you're asking this jury to believe that your husband of 35 years tried to murder you in cold blood. Don't you think that's a bit dramatic? I'm not asking them to believe anything. I'm presenting evidence. The videos speak for themselves. The medical records speak for themselves. The jury can decide what they believe based on facts, not on how dramatic it sounds. Robert Chen tried for another hour, tried to find inconsistencies in my testimony, tried to make me angry, emotional, unreliable. I stayed calm, stayed factual, answered every question with the same measured tone I'd used for 33 years, helping library patrons find information. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I looked at Gerald, really looked at him. He looked smaller somehow, older, defeated. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. 4 hours to review 2 weeks of evidence. 4 hours to watch the videos again. 4 hours to decide whether Gerald Patterson had tried to murder his wife. They came back with a verdict just before 5 p.m. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, theft. The courtroom was silent. Gerald sat frozen, staring straight ahead, not believing what he was hearing. Simone, who'd been sitting in the back row after giving her testimony, started crying. I felt nothing. Just a cold, clear sense of completion, of a job finished, of justice served. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. At the sentencing hearing, the prosecutor asked for the maximum: 30 years for attempted murder, consecutive sentences for the other charges. Robert Chen argued for leniency, reminded the judge that Gerald had no prior criminal record, that he'd worked for the Board of Education for 38 years, that he was 63 years old, that 30 years would be a life sentence. The judge listened to all of it. Then he looked at Gerald. Mr. Patterson, I've been a judge for 22 years. I've sentenced murderers, rapists, child abusers. I've seen evil in many forms. But what you did, what you tried to do to your wife, represents a particular kind of evil that disturbs me deeply. You didn't kill her in a moment of passion. You didn't strike her in anger. You researched how to kill her. You planned it methodically. You executed it carefully. You used her trust against her. You used her love against her. You calculated her value as a human being in terms of insurance payout and financial gain. And when your own wife, the mother of your child, your partner of 35 years, started experiencing symptoms from the poison you were giving her, you didn't stop. You didn't feel remorse. You continued. You increased the dosage. You looked forward to her death. The only reason Valerie Patterson is alive today is because a stranger she barely knew cared more about her safety than you did. Because she was smart enough and strong enough and brave enough to save herself when you were trying to kill her. The law allows me to sentence you to 30 years for attempted murder. I'm going to do exactly that. No possibility of parole for 20 years. And I hope that every single day you spend in prison, you think about what you tried to do. You think about the woman whose only crime was loving you and trusting you. You think about how close you came to getting away with murder. And I hope that when you're released, if you're released, you're old enough and humbled enough to understand the magnitude of what you did. 30 years. Gerald would be 93 when he was eligible for parole. If he lived that long, more likely he'd die in prison. And I felt nothing about that. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just the cold understanding that this was justice. Imperfect, incomplete, but justice nonetheless. Simone's sentencing was the following week. Her lawyer argued that she'd been manipulated by Gerald, that she hadn't fully understood what she was participating in, that she'd ultimately cooperated with prosecutors. The judge gave her 7 years. Eligible for parole after serving 4, she'd be 50 when she got out, still young enough to rebuild her life. The inequality bothered me at first. Gerald got 30 years for planning and executing the murder attempt. Simone got 7 for being complicit in it. But Lisa explained, Simone didn't poison you, didn't research the murder method, didn't put pills in your vitamins. She knew about it, didn't stop it, participated in the planning. That's conspiracy. That's serious. But it's not the same as attempted murder. She could have warned me, could have called the police, could have saved me. She could have. She didn't. That's why she's going to prison. But the law distinguishes between active participation and passive complicity. It's not fair, maybe, but it's how the system works. I attended every day of the trial, sat in the front row, made sure Gerald saw me, made sure he understood that I'd survived, that I'd won, that the woman he'd thought was easy to kill had destroyed him instead. On the last day, after sentencing, Gerald looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time in maybe 35 years. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. His face said everything. Shock, rage, disbelief that I'd done this, that I'd been smart enough, strong enough, capable enough to bring him down. I looked back at him and thought about everything I could say, everything I wanted to say. But in the end, I said nothing. Just watched them take him away in handcuffs. Watched him disappear through the door to the holding cells, where he'd wait before being transferred to Stateville Correctional Center. Watched the end of our 35-year marriage. That was 8 months ago. I'm writing this now from my apartment, the same condo in Evanston, the one Gerald picked, the one that was supposed to be our fresh start. I kept it, kept the apartment, kept the furniture, kept the life we'd built. But I made it mine, repainted the walls, changed the locks, had Mr. Chen's cameras professionally removed. I didn't need them anymore, didn't want them anymore, wanted to live in a space that wasn't under surveillance. Mr. Chen visits once a month. We have dinner, talk about books, walk along the lake. He's become a friend, a real friend, the kind you make when someone saves your life and asks for nothing in return. Nikki knows everything now. Flew in from Houston the day after Gerald was arrested. Cried with me. Raged with me. held me while I finally let myself feel everything I'd been too focused to feel while building the case. She asked me once if I still loved him, if some part of me mourned the marriage we'd had. I told her the truth. I mourned the marriage I thought we had, the partnership I believed in, the man I thought I'd married. But Gerald? The real Gerald, the one who researched how to kill me, who crushed pills into my vitamins, who calculated my worth as an insurance payout? I didn't love him. Never had, because that man was a stranger. I got the money back, all of it. The court ordered full restitution, the $150,000 he'd spent on Simone, plus the house sale proceeds he'd planned to steal, plus damages. I used it to hire a financial advisor, invested it properly, set myself up for the retirement I'd actually earned, instead of the death Gerald had planned. I volunteer at Woodson Library now, 3 days a week, teaching computer literacy to seniors, helping people research their family histories, doing the work I loved without the administrative burden. And I'm writing. Started a blog about financial abuse in marriage, about recognizing the signs, about protecting yourself, about surviving when the person who promised to love you tries to kill you instead. Other women have reached out, shared their stories, told me about husbands who controlled money, who isolated them, who made them feel crazy for suspecting what they knew to be true. I help them, share resources, connect them with lawyers like Lisa. Remind them they're not alone. Because I was alone. For 3 weeks, I lived with a man who was actively trying to kill me, and I couldn't tell anyone, couldn't ask for help, couldn't do anything except build my case in secret and hope I survived long enough to use it. But I did survive, and now I use that survival to help others do the same. That's my revenge. Not the 30 years Gerald will serve, not the money I got back, not even the satisfaction of watching him realize I'd outsmarted him. My revenge is living, fully, completely, on my own terms. My revenge is being the woman Grandma Ruth raised me to be, educated, informed, powerful in the way that comes from knowing things, from finding truth, from refusing to be silenced. My revenge is waking up every morning in an apartment I own, in a life I control, surrounded by people who actually care about me instead of calculating my worth as a corpse. Gerald thought he could kill me and get away with it. He thought I was just an obedient wife who'd do whatever he told me to do. He thought wrong, and he'll have 20 years in prison to think about exactly how wrong he was. Dear listeners, that's my story. The story of hidden cameras and revealed evil. The story of a husband who tried to murder his wife, and the wife who was smarter than he ever gave her credit for. Thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for understanding that stories like mine don't end with perfect healing or complete closure. They end with survival, with justice, with the hard-won freedom that comes from saving yourself when nobody else will. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share. And if you're in a situation where someone you love is hurting you, controlling you, threatening you, know that you're not alone. Know that help exists. Know that you can survive. And know that survival is its own kind of power. Until next time, remember, trust your instincts. Document everything. And never underestimate what you're capable of when your life depends on it. Sometimes the person trying to kill you makes one fatal mistake. They assume you'll die quietly. Don't.